Hello everybody, thank you for tuning to the Ayala Law YouTube channel. Today we're going to give a little bit of an overview of what are liens, an overview of Florida lien law basics. Lien is a word that comes from the French language and it means attachment, when something binds to another thing. The way I explain it to my clients is very simple. When you have this book of post-its and you attach a clip to the post-it, now if you hand this to somebody else with it, it'll just travel with it from hand to hand. The exact same principle applies to liens. When something, whether it's a vehicle, a piece of real estate, has a lien on it, it doesn't matter how many owners it has. That lien will travel from owner to owner unless it is satisfied, unless you go through another legal process to extinguish that lien. So let's see what kind of, let's go over this presentation and to see what liens are in Florida. First, it is important to understand that a lien is security obligation. Someone gets a lien because it wants security over some sort of debt that it has, right? We have different kinds. We have consensual liens, liens that are entered upon mutual agreement of parties. The most typical that everybody knows is, for example, mortgages. Mortgages are contracts or agreements between the parties where one party owns a piece of property, the other one is obtaining a sum of money, and then they agree that that money is going to be collateralized in the home, in the property. That is a consensual lien. A mortgage is a lien. There are other kinds of liens like mechanics liens, judgment liens. We'll go over some of those. It is important to understand also the distinction between attachment versus perfection. So basically, if I owe you money and I want you to give me a lien on your house, just by you agreeing for me to have a lien on your house doesn't perfect that lien. There's a process that you need to follow for that lien to be perfected under the law and for that lien to be then enforceable. Because even if you wanted to give me a lien or collateralize a debt with a piece of property that you're voluntarily surrendering to me, that may not be enforced if you don't follow the proper procedure. How do you perfect a lien? It depends on the type of lien. For example, on the mechanics lien, which are usually the construction liens, right? In the construction industry, some contractor builds a pool and then the contractor doesn't get paid. That contractor can place, in most jurisdictions, in Florida of course too, can place a lien on the property where it did the construction work. Now, there are certain requirements we'll go over in more detail later in the presentation, but generally you need to put a notice, then you need to record it in official records, serve a copy of the lien to the property owner, etc. So it is not automatic. You need to follow the process in order for your lien to be valid, even if you have entitlement or you have a right to collateralize a given debt with a piece of property or with some asset. Different types of liens. For example, we have real property liens, personal property liens. You can literally put a lien on virtually anything. You can put a lien on an iPhone. You can put a lien on virtually any physical thing. There are vehicle liens, judgment liens, tax liens, and UCC liens, generally in the context of business transactions. Real property liens are generally mortgage, HOA liens, homeowner association. If you don't pay your association dues, the association will give you some sort of notice that you haven't paid, or if you haven't paid a special assessment that your association had on your condominium, the association will give you a notice, say, hey, you haven't paid this. They'll give you a certain amount of time, and then if you don't pay, ultimately the association will submit a claim of lien on your property. So that's a very actually common type of lien. Municipal code enforcement liens, very typical lien. If you have a violation on your house, if you have an open permit that you haven't fixed, something to do with the ordinance or the regulations of your city, the city can impose a lien on your property. In general, in Florida, the rule is first in time, first in right. So because you could have more than one lien in any given piece of property. So what's the priority? Who? Imagine that. Think of the case of mortgages. If you have a house with a valuation, let's say $1 million, and you have one mortgage for $600,000, and then another mortgage for $400,000, right? First mortgage for $600,000, second mortgage for $400,000. Who has priority? The one that has priority is the one that recorded first, the one that obtained that lien first and perfected it first. Because at any given point, let's say the property goes down in value, right? And the property, let's say, depreciates and is now worth $500,000. So there's some people, there's some interest that is not going to get paid, and there's not going to be enough value for the second mortgage or even for part of that first mortgage in my $1,600,000 mortgage example. So that's why the priority of the liens is very important and matters, especially when there are multiple liens in a piece of property. Generally, when you put a lien on property, if you want to collect on that lien, you have to sell that property. In order to sell that property, you need to foreclose on your lien. It's a judicial remedy. There are exceptions when we're dealing with homestead, but homestead exceptions don't apply if you voluntarily surrendered your property to a lien, if you gave it to somebody, or if it is a mortgage that is called first money purchase mortgage, which is basically a mortgage that you obtain to purchase that house to begin with, right? Homestead protections would not apply in those types of scenarios. Let's talk about construction or mechanics liens. These are regulated by Chapter 713 of Florida statutes and are very common here in South Florida, and they require first a notice to the owner, and you have to follow the claim of lien deadlines. There are certain deadlines that you need to follow in order to perfect this lien. You need to record it, and then you need to serve a copy of the lien to the property owner. Service, it's not just sending the person an email, sending it via mail. You need to officially serve it via a process server that is certified by the court and that serves these documents in the owner's hands. It has to be personally served. Then the owner will have 60 days to contest this lien, and you, the person filing or claiming a lien, will have 1 year to enforce it. If you don't enforce your mechanics or your construction liens within 1 year, then you potentially forgo your right to that lien. You basically lose your right or your claim on lien. This doesn't mean that you lose your debt. If you were owed, let's say, $100,000 and you did not file for foreclosure of enforcement of that $100,000 lien on a piece of property, by you not enforcing it within 1 year, you can't foreclose on the property anymore. You can still sue the owner. You can still sue for breach of contract. You can still sue for unpaid invoices to that property owner, but you will not have the asset as collateral to your debt. That's the importance of that, because that's the beauty of all this, to have your debt being collateralized and secured by a physical asset. Generally, in most lien law, lien enforcement law, perfecting of liens law, strict compliance is required. So if you miss one of the details, you don't serve it to the property to the correct address, you don't follow the requirements that these statutes tell you have to put on the lien paper, because at the end it's a piece of paper, then your lien could be defective and then it may not be enforceable, and the owner may have basis to challenge your lien. So it's important that you get all this right. Other type of lien, vehicle liens, for example, are governed by Chapter 319 of Florida statutes. Generally, most people finance a car, and the lender that gave the loan for the purchase of the car will have a lien that will be recorded in the title in the Florida Motor Vehicle Department. There are liens that are regulated by Chapter 713 of Florida statutes regarding garages. A lot of mechanic shops, they have to store cars, property, so all of that is regulated by Chapters 13.585. Warehouse liens, there are a lot of, especially here in South Florida, there's a lot of trading that goes on from South America to the US. South Americans purchasing property in Minnesota, up north, and then the property comes through Florida to Miami, for example, and then it's stored in a warehouse while it's in transit to head to South America. So these warehouses can put liens on the property if the storage fees are not paid or if invoices are not paid. So that's regulated by Section 677.209 of Florida statutes. Personal property liens, this is common on equipment loans and leases. It's perfected by filing what is called a UCC1 statement. If you ever gotten a loan from a bank, if you have a business and you've obtained a loan, it's very common that your lender is going to file a UCC1 statement, which is a filing in the Department of State website, in the Florida Corporation's website, that basically will say that the bank has a lien on your business, and if it has a lien on your business, it has a lien on all the assets of your business, right? I mean, your computer, your desk, your equipment, your receivables. So that's what is called a UCC1 statement. All fixtures filings may need local recording as well. So in the county recording of the particular city. To amend or to satisfy a lien, to get rid of a lien, you file what is called a UCC-3 statement, which is an amendment or a statement of satisfaction of the lien. So this is very common in the context of business transactions or loans to businesses. Judgment liens, these are liens that are not consensual. These are liens that are imposed on you. They're regulated by Chapter 55 of Florida statutes. In general, the most basic one is you get sued and you lose. You lose, you get a judgment against you, you get a judgment against your business. That final judgment from your lawsuit is going to be recorded in the county recording system, public records, and it's going to stay there for 20 years as a lien on any real estate property, on any assets that you may have in that county. Generally, you know, they will have to be filed with the Department of State in the case of personal property, but in the case of real property, it's recorded in the county recording. It's valid for 10 years and it can be re-recorded for another 10 years. Tax liens, another type of non-consensual liens. These liens are imposed on you. If you don't pay your taxes, the IRS will record Form 668 and attach automatically a lien on your assets. They could also issue a state tax warrant to basically go take your property. These type of liens always have a superior status. They take priority over any other regular liens. In the context of secure transactions, again in the business context, we have Article 9 of Florida Statutes, Chapter 679. This is what I mentioned earlier. It is important to keep in mind the issue of the priority and the date of perfection. The date of perfection is what it counts. If you took too long, and someone came after you and recorded first, even though your transaction came before, you may not have the priority. So very important to have your lawyer or someone make sure that they do the recording and the perfection of these liens right at the time of the closing, right at the time the transaction is finalized. Important considerations to have, you need to, if you're a business owner, you need to conduct a thorough UCC and public record searches. If you are buying a business, especially, for example, you got to make sure that your attorney makes a thorough search of the Department of State records, county record, name search, business search, and a comprehensive search to make sure you are buying some things or property or items that are free of liens. So very important to conduct these searches. This can get very messy. There could be 10, 15 liens. Sometimes credit card companies will file liens on your business. So you have to make sure you are advised as to which one has priority over the other ones in order to work on satisfying and organizing this lien. We had a client the other day that came to us and he had about 14 liens, mostly related to credit card debt. And sometimes lenders are not very diligent in filing UCC-3 statements or documents that show satisfaction of the lien, because a lot of these liens, they may have been paid a while ago. So it is important for business to be organized and have a good lawyer that's on top of this and make sure that your asset or your business is free of liens, because if you're going to go and knock the door of a bank to get some liquidity for your business, a loan for purchase of equipment or for operations, and then you all of a sudden find yourself that you have all of these liens that you have already paid, but they're still there and they should have been satisfied. So it may be a little bit of a delay in your transaction. It is not nice to find all these things. It's always generally upsetting. In terms of enforcement, if you have a lien, if you are entitled to a lien on certain property, make sure you litigate to enforce it, not just leave it hanging, or file yourself for satisfaction of a judgment. That's all with regards to lien. Let us know if you have any questions in the comments. Let us know if you want to talk about any other topics regarding liens, regarding real property, regarding business. Thank you for watching.